And going down the line, in Legacy, the matchup is William Cruse versus Tannen Grace in a Grixis Delver Mirror. Actually, Kevin Jones, not the Delver pilot this weekend. He's playing Esper Aggro. That's a deck we saw nearly top 8ing last weekend. He'll be playing against Phil Smith on Mono Red Aggro.
That'd be a interesting matchup there. You know, Thraben Inspector probably Kevin's best card here. But yeah, we'll be focusing on the modern matchup here, and you know, Harlan is going to be in a little bit of trouble. So he's really kind of leaning on the Tron player to stumble.
Matter Reshaper, the first play here from Cruse, or from Roop rather, Cruse, the Legacy player.
And that's off a Temple. That's already bad news for Harlan.
Yeah, it's an extra mana, and also this is a creature you don't have a clean answer to. Whether you bolt it, helix it, or let Path to Exile it, Andy gets a card.
Yeah, there's 2 basic wastes for the deck to find. On the other side, Matter Shaper not the most threatening card.
No, it'll get some damage in. It hits Harlan to 17. Matter Shaper is this interesting thing where it's always the glue of these Eldrazi decks, but it's never great in any matchup.
It's more like the first step on a staircase.
Yeah, that's a better example.
Doesn't make for a very impressive building on its own.
Thought-Knot Seer from Cruse. In response, Harlan will Path to Exile it. And now we see Harlan's hand. He has land 3 and 4. He has 2 Spell Quellers, a Snapcaster Mage,
Cryptic Command, and Lightning Helix. This is a fine hand in a lot of matchups, in particular if you're able to leverage the Spell Queller. Against a creature deck, this hand does look pretty nice, but against Eldrazi Tron, really nothing that he really wants. But again, his deck is drawing pretty slim stuff that he actually does want. In a lot of the games, maintaining that Snapcaster to have Path to Exile could allow him to cheese some wins. You know, getting the Spell Queller as a flying attacker.
It looks like Andy will just take the Cryptic Command.
Yeah, so pound for pound, he took the most impactful individual card.
It's the card that I think that looks like it's sure to trade. Cryptic will trade with a spell. Spell Queller, Snapcaster Mage, Lightning Helix. I guess outside of Snapcaster Mage, the Spell Quellers and Helix, it's not clear whether those will be useful.
It was a choice between Cryptic and Snapcaster. And depending on what's in Roop's hand here, that certainly informs that. He was able to set up like a Chalice that really invalidates Snapcaster Mage.
5 mana will be Reality Smasher. Coast is clear, and Matter Reshaper will swing in.
Harlan really has no problem snapcasting the Path on the Reality Smasher here.
Yeah, he just has to. Too much damage otherwise. We'll have to discard another card to it, though I don't know how much he cares about that second Spell Queller.
The second Celestial Colonnade also probably not too relevant if he drew a 5th land here, especially with the Cryptic Command out of the hand. A couple options of stuff he won't mind discarding.
It just feels like he's real. Man, his cards on curve are playing from behind here.
And that's frequently what's going to happen when your opponent is producing multiple mana off of a land.
Is this what it feels like to play Grixis against this deck?
This is actually a little bit more hopeful because it's Path to Exile and not Fatal Push.
Oh, gosh, okay. I know you talk a lot about how you hate playing this matchup from the Grixis side.
Yeah, it's miserable. The one thing is, like, you can steal games with Death Shadow specifically. The rest of your cards don't really matter.
You have one card that's more efficient than their deck.
Right. I guess Thoughtseize is on average better than counter spells. But the thing is, you can't be the top of their deck.
Or the middle part.
Right. Yeah, you won't win in time to not see the middle.
So Snapcaster blocks Matter Reshaper, and Harlan Path to Exiles the Smasher, discarding an island. The Matter Reshaper flips over Expedition Map, which can find the 3rd Tron piece for Andy, so it's a good find.
That can make for some giant walking ballista.
Looks like he has in hand Basilisk Collar, Matter Reshaper, Thought-Knot Seer, so no payoff for Tron mana.
If Harlan is going to win this matchup, you know, Jeskai against Eldrazi Tron, it's frequently going to involve burning your opponent down. Getting in some chip shots, using your burn to finish them off. Basilisk Collar, if that's able to connect once or twice, that's going to make that plan impossible.
You don't think he can play the control role here, where he actually just outscales them into the late game?
It just doesn't work against Eldrazi. Reality Smasher is so good against you. If they get Cavern of Souls, it makes your Cryptic Command so much worse. You're more able to control this deck than you are something just like the regular green Tron deck, where they're casting a bunch of Planeswalkers and then casting Ulamog. That is something that has changed in the Eldrazi Tron decks. Previously, they did feature a small number of Ulamog, though those have been removed from the deck. It makes sense, but it does hurt them in a matchup like this.
So Andy uses Expedition Map to find Urza's power plant, and now with all this mana, he'll cast Matter Shaper, which gets hit by a Spell Queller. But Andy knew about that. We'll see what the plan is here, and Thought Knot Seer looks like is what he was clearing the way for.
Yeah, that Reshaper certainly bait for the Spell Queller.
So he's Lightning Helix, Spell Queller, and land.
Honestly, I'm a little surprised to see Harlan bite on Spell Queller on a card as weak as Matter Reshaper.
It just feels like a trap. With second Spell Queller in hand, I understand it. Where he says, hey, I want to make sure these hit something.
He does want to get a clock going. That much is true.
You might let it resolve and then just end step a Spell Queller.
Yeah, or I would just sit on the Spell Queller. You know, even Lightning Helix and Matter Reshaper, sometimes that works out fine.
Fifth land from Harlan, draws a sixth in hand. Well, next turn he can start activating Colonnades. But this Basilisk, there was a Basilisk Collar played by Andy, so if Harlan's trying to go for that burn plan you suggested, this is actually a card he needs to answer.
And given the 4 toughness on Thought Knot Seer, equipping that with the Collar, it's going to be really tough for Harlan to beat.
Yeah, he can block and Lightning Helix it together.
Then he's facing down Reshaper Collar.
Yeah, he gets to draw a card and he would need it to be good. Chalice of the Void for 2 is the play from Andy Roop.
Very adamant about 2 being the number.
He knows there's a Lightning Helix in Harlan's hand.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Snapcaster Mage, generally the best spell in Harlan's deck as well.
Yeah, that seems like the number you'd want in this matchup. Now, on Andy's side, the 2 mana spells he has are 2 Mind Stones and
Chalice on 1.
Walking Ballista on 1, which I don't
that
think
one
play.
probably not.
This is not bad.
And Harlan responds with Lightning Helix on the Thought Knot Seer, trying to incentivize Roop not to attack and demonstrating that he would throw the Spell Queller in front.
So Andy will equip Basilisk Collar, but because that Helix won't attack it this turn.
Yeah, really like the pass there, especially with him still on 20.
Harlan draws Serum Visions. He's going to need an answer to the Thought Knot with Collar. I think he's fetching here. Looks like he'll go for Colonnade and Serum Visions.
Yeah, he can attack with the Vigilant Land, cast Serum Visions afterwards.
Yeah, it does some damage. Remember, though, that Andy will gain the life back on his own turn.
Right.
Both players playing off the top of their decks right now. No cards in hand. A swing for 6 hits Andy to 14. Actually, he'll Ghost Quarter away the Colonnade. Fair enough. I'll take 2, go to 18.
Yeah, Harlan making the plays available to him, but he's very far behind
even
here.
on top of that, the fact that Andy gets to play Ghost Quarters for Colonnades, it's just another level.
Right. Still gets the Serum Visions as he has another basic island to search up.
Well, he draws Lightning Helix, a card that's not castable. His top cards are okay, though. Looks like Path to Exile and Logic Knot.
Yeah, Logic Knot gets to inflate its converted mana cost, so you can cast that through the Chalice.
Mad Reshape, or Thought Knot Seer with Collar will attack. And Andy's going to pass his last card in hand, a Dismember.
Back up to 22, firmly in the driver's seat.
Yeah, that. It's really neat that a card like Basilisk Collar has started seeing modern play. On the surface, it looks pretty innocent.
Yeah, the combination with Walking Ballista and Endbringer is really what drew that card to this deck.
You see, Andy will use a Dismember to get his Mad Reshaper back from under the Spell Queller.
When you play against decks that are so heavy on lightning bolts or burn spells, the life gain really comes up. And with the Collar on the Reshaper, Roop can just attack into that Celestial Colonnade. Doesn't have to worry about anything happening there.
And Reshaper and Thought Knot will swing. It's a 2-turn clock with Harlan at 14.
And with Chalice on 2 already set up, if he trades the Thought Knot with the Colonnade, that's not a huge issue because a lot of Harlan's deck is just turned off.
And it's going to have the path and a block, so a full trade.
And now Roop is out of basics, so there's only 2 wastes in the deck. Wasn't able to find anything off the path. Small win for Harlan there.
Yeah, he'll need another threat. Harlan has picked up that Logic Knot too, so.
And Spell Queller off the top this turn.
Yeah, Mind Stone drawn by Andy. There we go.
That's not what he wants.
It's one of the 2 uncastables in his deck, thanks to his own Chalice of the Void. Harlan is stabilized right now.
Yeah, things are actually looking all right for Harlan. There's actually a reasonable argument for Roop to hang back with the Thought Knot Seer, just because trading with the Colonnade doesn't behoove him and the Colonnade doesn't matter.
Walking Ballista from Andy gets hit by Logic Knot. Wouldn't have really mattered how much mana he put into it. The Logic Knot would have, with Delve, will counter.
Yeah, plenty of cards in the graveyard for Harlan. Doesn't need to maintain any of them because he can't cast Snapcaster Mages this game anyway.
Yeah, and on the stack, remember, Logic Knot has converted mana cost, well, that turn of 7, so it's still good in the face of Chalice of the Void.
Though Harlan, down the line, could use Cryptic Command to bounce the Chalice if he draws one of those, and that'll give him access to more powerful spells later.
Thought Knot Seer from Roop gets hit by a Spell Queller on Harlan's side. That's a Spell Queller he knew about, though, right?
I don't believe so.
Oh, no. He played both of them.
He's been through a lot this game.
They are delved away in that stack in the up top.
And Spell Queller plays even if Roop sets up Cavern of Souls because it just exiles the spell. The word counter not featured there.
A swing for 2. Harlan's hand, Lightning Helix and Lightning Bolt. The second one of those castable.
We're still in a spot where if Roop finds a Walking Ballista, that really changes the game.
But he's taking 2 points a turn. Might be both Mind Stones in Andy's hand.
That's very unfortunate, and that can happen to the Eldrazi Tron deck.
Well, those are his only 2 mana spells.
Well, I also can just draw more lands.
Yeah, it's both. When he played, I said, well, there's only 2 cards in Andy's deck that shuts off. They're both in his hand now.
Yeah, well, he's not using anything to filter his draws, right? This is a very real scenario for decks like this.
Both players looking for some draws to help them out. Harlan's hand still just that Lightning Bolt. Here's Expedition Map from Andy Roop. It can find Seagate Wreckage, which means Andy has to throw
get those
these,
Mind Stones out of his hand. Start drawing extra cards.
You see, he's just gonna throw some Mind Stones into his own Chalice, get his hand out of cards.
Has mana left over to activate the Seagate Wreckage due to the mana production of the Tron lands.
There we go, Seagate Wreckage. actually a very powerful card at this point in the game, especially with the amount of mana Andy has.
Right. And Harlan, again, not packing any Spreading Seas. Well, can't resolve that one through Chalice anyway, but no Ghost Quarters either.
Okay. Yeah, no way to answer the land.
Starting to get to a point where the remaining dismembers in Roop's deck are looking worse and worse over time.
Yeah, he's getting low on life points. If he ever connects with a creature with Basilisk Collar, then he'll be able to cast them again, though he's probably winning at that point.
Right.
Now, Andy drew a card that's not castable this turn as Harlan fetches on end step.
Yeah, not a lot of mana left over with having to commit 4 mana into countering his own Mind Stones.
Another Lightning Helix drawn for Fear. As the game keeps going, Fear is going to end up with more 2s than Andy.
The 2s are manageable if he produces a Cryptic command, though. Just bounce the Chalice, throw a bunch of Lightning Helixes upstairs.
And a big miss for Andy. So his hand was 1 land, and he drew another this turn, which means he cannot activate Seagate Wreckage.
Wow. And Harlan's very close to closing this game. Celestial Colonnade picked up there.
But here's a big one. I think we're going to see Reality Smasher using Cavern of Souls to make it uncounterable.
All right, that's really powerful. Get the collar on that.
Yeah.
Bash for some life gain.
I mean, and with Andy drawing extra cards, this was bound to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Harlan in a tight spot this game, as it looks like it may have turned against him, but both his teammates helping him out, Tannen Grace and Kevin Jones, both winners in their game 1. And here's the Smasher. Gonna nab 5 life points off of Harlan.
Yeah, Roop back up to 13. And Harlan goes for a
He's
Chalice
gonna try
check.
for it, yep.
He has enough Helixes left over, where it could be a thing. Really wanted to pick up Cryptic Command on that turn, though. And it looks like Roop may have done it.
Yeah, upkeep, he will use Seagate Wreckage. So he did that last turn as well. Swings for 5. Activate of Colonnade by Fear. Looks like he's trying to Colonnade plus Bolt. It's not pretty. Blocks.
And if Roop knows how Trample Death Touch work, Harlan takes 4 off that. And to the way his hand just moved, it looks a lot like Harlan was taking 4.
And Matter Reshaper's the post-combat play. And another Basilisk Collar on it.
Yeah, and Roop now very far ahead.
We're going to update life totals in a second here, and you figure out how damage was assigned, asking the judge on that. Bolt will finish off the Reality Smasher. Yeah, and Andy on point with the Trample Death Touch. Harlan is at 2. Okay, Path to Exile to draw from Harlan. That plays.
Take care of this Reshaper, though now he has to deal a lot more damage to actually close the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's where these Basilisk Collars are just being so scary. And Andy drawing extra cards each turn with Seagate Wreckage.
And this is territory where Walking Ballista would be lethal from any point. As long as, oh yeah, there's no way that Roop cast it for as a 1/1 into his own Chalice.
Think we see All Is Dust as the draw for Andy?
Sure.
He's got mana to use.
Plenty of mana. That 7 mana spell is nothing.
Yeah, that Spell Queller, Dust.
Gets back Thought Knot Seer too.
Harlan's gonna run another Bolt check. All right, Spell Queller's down, Thought Knot into play, trigger on the stack. Harlan has to Path to Exile the Matter Reshaper to stay alive.
Yeah, he's at 2. Can't take another hit off that one.
All right, and this goes to what you were saying earlier about Jeskai can't play for the late game in this matchup, and this looks to be why. Now, maybe without Chalice for 2 in play, Harlan would have more shots here.
Big opening, huge factor in Roop's favor as well is just that Seagate Wreckage. Harlan's the blue deck, but he's drawing fewer cards.
Yeah, Seagate Wreckage may have been the card that won Andy this game. Without it, his Expedition map wouldn't have done much.
I like how deliberate Roop is being with his lands. He has more mana they can ever possibly use, but taps specific lands to cast this Reality Smasher.
Yeah. Full swing, tap the team and draw from Harlan.
And if you're wondering if Harlan is drawing to any copies of Supreme Verdict, the answer is no.
No, and game 1 goes to Andy Roop. Yeah, and that is something that we see in the blue-white deck that makes us more manageable. It's cards like Supreme Verdict, Detention Sphere. Looking at the sideboard for Harlan, do we have things then that we like?
Yeah, he's going to get some help here. So the full list here is 4 Leyline of the Void, 3 Spreading Seas, 3 Ceremonious Rejection, a Wear Tear, a Dispel, a Celestial Purge, a Vidalian Click, and an Elspeth Sun's Champion. So it's actually a lot to like here. The 3 Spreading Seas are reasonable. They can shut off a lot of the utility lands or the mana-making lands, depending on how the game shapes up. Ceremonious Rejection counters any spell, assuming there's no Cavern of Souls protecting it. Wear Tear has actually gotten a little bit better in this matchup because it... Actually, yeah.
It still
depends.
hits an artifact.
Right. It depends how if you can cast it for 3, you can get through Chalice with this. This card is reasonable in this matchup. It's not his best.
Yeah. Now you would need an enchantment to cast that. So, but he still
if you
can
want to cast it for 3, right? His own Spreading Seas, though, that's probably not ideal. The Elspeth Sun's Champion is nice against all these 4 and 5 power creatures.
I like that a lot. And then Ceremonious Rejection. This is a card when it was printed. A lot of people said, hey, it's costed in a way where it could see some play in the older formats. 3 of them in the sideboard, that is a lot for this matchup. It shows that he's really respecting the deck.
And this is something that's become relatively common as Eldrazi Tron has become one of the most popular decks in the format, usually very well represented. This deck just kind of gets better over time, and the list that people have right now is very powerful.
Jeskai Control is an interesting deck in that we saw 4 years ago, Sean McLaren win a Pro Tour with this deck. And it hasn't changed all that much.
Yeah, it was already... this is not the kind of deck where the spells that you would want to play are generally printed over time. The most recent upgrade would be the Spell Quellers. But you're not going to get better options than Lightning Bolt, Path to Exile, Snapcaster Mage showing up in Standard.
We saw the metagame Gurus a little over a year ago. Have not 1 but 2 great open finishes with this Jeskai deck. They are playing Nahiri Emrakul as their finisher. Kind of in that Spell Queller spot. What I think is interesting about the deck is that it seems to go from winning opens to then a couple months later, players will tell me that they think it's unplayable. And the list, and I understand that decks can change, but it's that the list doesn't change very much.
Yeah, it just kind of has a shifting role in the metagame.
Yeah. A lot, but the draw to it is that you're playing Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt, and Snapcaster Mage. That's the selling point.
Yeah. Pretty much. This is also just the style of a lot of players. Harlan likes doing nothing.
Yeah, this is actually, interesting enough, I like decks that do nothing. There's too much something in this deck.
It can play a lot of tempo games.
Yeah.
That is something that Harlan likes as well, though. He's a man that likes a lightning bolt.
Yeah, if I were to play Control, I would play blue-white instead of this. When someone says, hey, it's time to start snapcasting their lightning bolts at their face, I'm off it.
Those games are so satisfying.
No,
that's all I want.
When I'm playing the Control deck, I like my win con to be the concession.
Very much not for me.
What's your win con? The 3rd Think Twice.
The 5th Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, I have 6 cards to your 0. Do you want to keep playing? All 6 of mine are good. All right, players here are going to get ready for a second game. Now in Modern, over Star City Games, for a couple of months, we've had the Tarmo die, made specifically for modern formats, I guess Legacy too. You can keep track of the power and toughness of your creatures in style, or of your, well, Tarmogoyfs. I would assume that'd be, or your Lurgoyfs.
Right.
You can get them in singles or sets of 4, available now at starcitygames.com/Tarmo-die.
It's nice that it just rolls. It's even less effort than a spin down.
And 7s on both sides for the second game. One of the things I do enjoy about Jeskai Control is the deck is very consistent. The mana's good, curve is good, it does the same thing every game. Question for me here as we start our second game is that thing it does going to be good enough against Eldrazi?
Yeah, that's actually kind of downside, given that the thing that it does matches up so poorly in this matchup.
Ooh, this plays really nice. Andy had the turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, which is always scary, very scary. Harlan cracks a fetch land, taps double blue, delves the fetch land to Logic Knot it for 1.
Yeah, double Eldrazi Temple to start off for Roop. First spell was countered, but this is still a great start. That much mana development, he could have another Thought-Knot Seer in the next turn. If he has a Reality Smasher, he's applying a ton of pressure that way.
He'll play Spreading Seas on one of the temples. Draws Ceremonious Rejection. And looks like, and I like his sequencing here, in case he drew Celestial Colonnade off the seas. That's why you saw him do that before his land drop.
Yeah, basically anytime you draw a card, you want to do that before you make your land drop.
Yeah. Plays a fetch land to leave that up. Urza's Tower for Andy. Same amount of mana as last turn. But that's enough for another Thought-Knot if he has it. Ceremonious Rejection is the kind of card which we see, I think, be printed a lot right now. These cards that are efficient but narrow.
Mm-hmm. And they 1-for-1 exactly.
Yeah.
This is not as powerful as a lot of hosers that you used to see in Magic's history. When you go all the way back to stuff like Dread of Night and Chill.
Or just like the Blasts, Pyro Blast.
Right.
That card is way
The fact
efficient.
that it deals with a spell on the stack or a permanent on the battlefield is pretty
It's
unreal.
the permanent on the battlefield part is unreal. Like, what's
For
this
one.
doing? Yeah.
For one. That's fine.
Has blow up your whatever for 1. Expedition map for Andy. Don't think that will get the ceremonies out of Harlan's hand.
Mm-hmm. Counters look to be on Roop's radar here. He has a Chalice of the Void. Leads on Expedition map here, and maybe you can get a rejection that way. Unlikely, though, given that he already has the unchecked second Eldrazi Temple. And it looks like he did hit here. Harlan's going to go for the rejection on the map.
Well, there's 2 ways to fight this, right? He can counter the payoff spells, or he can counter the maps.
Yeah, and if the map just finds Cavern of Souls, that rejection's not going to do a lot. Given that Roop's follow-up is Chalice of the Void, though, this is going to get pretty bad for Harlan.
He's going to surgically extract Logic Knot.
Gets a look at the hand, which might be the best upside here.
Yeah, I guess if you're about, and you might say, why wouldn't he surgically extract Ceremonious? Well, the answer's about to be cast.
Right. If the coast is clear for a Chalice on 1, those Ceremonious rejections, they don't matter.
Nor does that Path to Exile in Harlan's hand. He'll be left with a Vendilion Click and 2 lands. I mean, he can use the Vendilion Click on his own Path to Exile. Draw a card. Our first match of the round has complete, though. Up on the Legacy table, Tan and Grace is victorious in the Delver Mirror match, winning 2-0 over William Cruse.
Yeah, Grixis, Delver, really any Delver Mirror in Legacy, generally very skill-intensive bouts. Tannen, a player with a lot of experience in the format. Told me he was thinking about not registering Delver specifically this weekend, but he came to his senses. And there is that Chalice on 1 for Roop. Good chance you see Harlan use that Vendilion Click to get that Path to Exile into a card, especially since he didn't fire it off on Roop's draw step. His other option there is to just try to get something meaningful out of Roop's hand. Given that Harlan just has nothing going on, good chance he wants to try to draw into some more relevant action.
Sure.
The flying attacker also pretty significant. He has to start getting damage in. As you saw last game, Harlan does end up in a pretty bad spots as the game goes long, and if Roop has a meaningful life total, it can be really tough.
Thought Not Seer gets hit by Spell Queller.
Really good pickup by Harlan there. And that's a flying attacker. That's great.
And they'll start doing some damage. We saw some of this last game. It didn't add up to enough, but that was in large part due to Basilisk Collar, a card that not only isn't in play, but is not going to be in play. It only costs 1.
Chalice on 1 stops that.
Vendilion Click during draw step. Andy's hand. Mind Stone, the Reality Smasher, Mattery Shaper, and Ghost Quarter.
Harlan takes the good card, Reality Smasher, out of there.
Now, another good card, though, Andy picks up, but draws Thought Knot off it.
And Thought Knot's good, but now Harlan has 5 power in the air and is on the front foot.
Right, Andy will have to race back. And he'll do it without Basilisk Collar. This could be tough. When he had Reality Smasher, he was probably all about racing back.
Right.
Mind Stone plus Thought Knot, the sequence for Andy. Harlan will path it and then have his path get countered. Good
Pretty
call.
free Chalice check there.
Yeah. Draws Ceremonious Rejection. That doesn't do anything, but he'll attack for 5. He's ahead in the race. See if he can stay there. Ahead by more than a turn. Andy's going to need something to help him out.
Walking Ballista would be excellent.
Yep. He'll look with Mind Stone. Finds Basilisk Collar.
That's not going to do it. It would be real good if there wasn't a Chalice on 1.
Well, I mean, I guess if there wasn't a Chalice on 1, Harlan could probably Ceremonious Rejection it. So, fair enough. But
that Path to Exile would have resolved.
yeah, I guess there'd be no creatures to put it on.
Right. And the Chalice definitely looked correct when it happened.
Yeah.
This is just some unlucky stuff happening off the top.
Here's Mattery Shaper and a land. He's got 2 more turns to find something. Swings for 5. Harlan draws some more 1-mana cards. Both players with the cards in their hand, but neither of them with any cards that do anything. And I guess if you look at this race, is Harlan actually winning it?
It looks like he's dead if he doesn't have something actually.
Okay, well, Reality Smasher changes it a lot to dead, and there's the match for Andy Roop.
Yeah, Reality Smasher makes that 12 exactly.
Yeah.
Harlan tries
Wow.
Ceremonious Rejection, which he drew, but Chalice on 1 checks that.
Well, even before the Smasher was drawn, I think Andy may have been okay in the race.
He was attacking for 7 before. That's
And
dead
Harlan
into.
could only put him to 1.
Well, Harlan
so
just could attack with Click, leave back Queller.
yeah. Okay. Yep. And then right, and force him to have something. But this means everything comes down to our standard match. It is Phil Smith versus Kevin Jones. And we're going to go ahead and move over there momentarily. Kevin on Esper aggro. He's up a game. It is still in game 2, and that clock is correct, so keep that one in mind as we switch over.
Aggro deck's matchup going late here. And it looks like this is the Eldrazi version of Mono Red, going a little bit bigger. We got a couple Thought Knot Seers. Not a ton, though. It's still pretty low to the ground.
Yeah, we see over as Phil Smith on the left. He's at 8. Soulscar Mage, Reality Smasher, Thought Knot Seer, and that's a Moonrise Intruder, the flipped version of Village Messenger. The 1-drops, the Raging Goblin Werewolf.
Raging Goblin, a pretty powerful or popular analog for these red decks right now. You see some Bomat Couriers, you see Village Messenger. No Bomat Couriers in this list.
Raging Werewolf, perhaps. Kevin's side, 2 copies of Glorybound Initiate and Heart of Kiran are in play, and he's got Phil Smith down to 8, so Heart of Kiran is threatening.
It's a good closer. Still has a good amount of life, 19. You got to figure that those Glorybound Initiates did him some favors there. A little bit outclassed now that Reality Smasher has shown up to block, but that Heart is still threatening to close the game.
Yeah. Kevin just 3 lands. Looks like he got some big cards in hand he can't cast either. Kalitas and Gideon. We're gonna look at Moonrise Intruder. I believe that's the card we have on Phil Smith's side. It's just a 2/2 Menace on the back side. Will turn back into a 1/1 Haste if Kevin can play 2 spells.
Not that the 2/2 Menace particularly threatening in the first place.
Yeah, not too much. Kevin will draw a card with a clue token, and I think that might be a setup for his Fatal Push. Now she'll just bring back Scrap Heap Scrounger. It's his main phase.
Yeah, that one can crew the Heart. It can't block anyway. It leaves back the Initiates in case anything goes terribly wrong.
Okay, swings.
Could also just jam with them because they're both lethal, gain 8 life.
Yeah, Reality Smasher will get to eat one of them, but the other one will get to trade back, so he's going to exert both Glorybound Initiates and attack all 3. So both Initiates have to be blocked, and it looks like Soulscar Mage and Reality Smasher are up to the job.
And the full game really does rest on this Heart of Kiran here. So these other attacks, gaining the 8 life, that matters more than those 3 ones on the ground.
Right, so Kevin goes to 27 on the swing. I do like that. Yeah, he's planning to attack for lethal next turn. Might as well gain as much life as possible.
Yep. And for Phil Smith, he does have 2 copies of Abrade in the sideboard. We saw Tom Ross go heavy on that card earlier, but that's the card that he's going to need right now.
And Eldrazi Obligator. Checking how the rules work here. Yeah, it'll still be exerted. Is the play. It looks like Phil wants to take that because he needs to gain the 4 life back.
Right.
I actually like that a lot.
Can't just be at 4 here.
Yeah, just because the creature changes power or changes ownership, it is still exerted, and an exerted creature does not untap.
Right.
So as long as he attacks with it, it's fine. If he steals it and doesn't swing, then Kevin
just right.
Yeah, okay.
Stealing it and not attacking seems like a pretty weird line. Don't think I'm on board for that one.
It's still exerted now, and then Phil can exert it again, which doesn't put a second exert on it. It's just still exerted.
It would check for Phil's untap step, where it would not normally be untapping anyway.
Yeah. And looks like a swing. Phil's trying to decide how he and his teammates talking about how much he wants to attack here. He's definitely going to attack and exert. Looks like he's leaving back 2 blockers. And this is actually a very tricky block. He needs to make sure he gets enough damage to win in 2 attacks. And it looks like, yeah, so the judge has answered his questions about exert. So he makes some attacks. It looks like 4, 8, make it 15 if Kevin takes all of this.
Hangs back the Obligator. That one would just get in combat and trade with the Thraben Inspector.
Looks like Kevin's thinking about jumping in front of 4 of this damage. That's what he'll do. So he takes 11, goes to 16. Phil up to 8. Kevin gets his Glory Bound Initiate back.
Now Phil has 14 power of creatures. And some red spells in hand, at least one of them Earthshaker Kenra. Kevin's in trouble.
Another Kali toss. He has Gideon. He has a lot of cards here that could play.
Gideon is a great resource for crewing the heart.
Yeah.
You can use it to attack and block in addition to making a 2/2.
Yeah, and if Phil had attacked with Eldrazi Obligator, Gideon would have been lethal.
Right.
So Kevin will cast the Gideon. Make a 2/2. Crew the vehicle with Gideon. And Scrounger and the Heart of Kiran will swing. It's only 7 damage. Phil can take all this.
Yes, just wants to maintain that Obligator because it gives him more power for a big swing.
Yeah, if he has to try to win on the next turn, he doesn't want to block anything.
Yeah, 1 and 4, pretty similar here.
They both are dead to Heart of Kiran.
Right.
So on the surface, then it looks like a clean no block, and that's what he'll do. He'll go to 1. Just under 10 minutes remain in the round. It all comes to the standard match between Kevin Jones and Phil Smith.
Phil has to find a way to get in for lethal this game and then win a 3rd game.
Yeah, he's drawn a 2nd copy of Earthshaker Kenra.
So you can invalidate the Knight Ally token as a blocker. That's all well and good.
All right, no blocks for the Knight Ally. And his hand is Hanvir Garrison, Chandra Torture Defiance, and another Kenra. I think his play's pretty straightforward. I think it's both Kenra. Now, haven't checked to see if it's lethal. I don't know if he has either. Let's find out.
It looks like 16 with no blocks, but crewing the heart and getting in front of not Thought-Knot Seer and not Reality Smasher should win this game for Kevin Jones.
Well, now that he's at 1, Kevin can actually block Thought-Knot as well,
I suppose that
right?
you can, chip in with these 3 attackers even losing the heart.
With Gideon, or yeah. None of these are attacking Gideon. They're at Kevin.
I suppose he needs to get in front of more than 2 damage so that he doesn't die to shock, which might be hanging out.
All right, if he blocks Thought-Knot, we have 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Make that 14 damage. Looks good. Kevin goes to 2. That'll be the match and the round. The team of Tan and Grace, Harlan Fear, and Kevin Jones are your winners.
Yeah, Kevin gained a lot of life, and that was actually pretty close for the mono red aggro deck. The Glory Bound Initiate gained a ton there.